while since I've done this, isn't it? But I figured, what better way than to come back for UFC 300. So, man, I'm excited for this. I'm so excited I've decided to do another video, and it's been a while. So, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever it may be. I forgot to add that part in. But yeah, we got UFC 300 this weekend, and I'm super excited about it. So I thought I'd come on here and we'll have a little chinwag, we'll have a little talk, and chat about it. So we've got UFC 300, the biggest card of the year. Pereira versus Hill. This card is a 13 fight card. Let me turn my mic a little bit to the side. Okay, so we got a 13 fight card here, and it's stacked from top to bottom. So I'm already like nearly 2 minutes into this intro. So let's save the stories from why I've not been here and what's gonna happen in the future for another video. Today's not the video for that. Let's talk about UFC 300. 13 fight card. It's taking place in the T-Mobile Arena, Las Vegas. Oh yes. Okay. We got a main card headlined by Alex Pereira and Jamal Hill. It's a 3-fight title fight, 2 weight title bouts, and a BMF title bout too. But we'll go straight down to the bottom. For the first fight of the night. And the first fight of the night is Davison Figueiredo versus Cody Garbrandt in the bantamweight division. So this fight has been talked about before. When Cody Garbrandt tried to go back down to flyweight, he wanted to fight Davison Figueiredo. Now Davison Figueiredo has moved up to bantamweight, got a win over Rob Font, and now is versus Cody Garbrandt in the first fight of the night is incredible. Okay, so Davison Figueiredo then, let's click on here. So Davison Figueiredo then, he's entering his 16th fight in the UFC. He's got 11 wins and 3 losses, and a draw in the UFC. So he came into the UFC, 15-0. And then, has had, a further, was it 14, 15 fights? This is going to be his 16th fight in the octagon. Of his 22 wins, I mean, I might have to turn up the gain a little bit on this. Okay. So of his 15 wins, of his 22 wins, sorry, 17 of them have been finished. You can tell I'm rusty on this. He's a 2-time flyweight champion, before eventually losing to Brandon Moreno a 2nd time. So now that's caused him to move up to bantamweight, and then he recently beat Rob Font. Cody Garbrandt, on the other hand, I mean, he's an extremely talented sports star. Ever since he was a young kid, throughout school, high school, he competed in wrestling and American football and had honours in both sports. He then switched to boxing, and his amateur record was 32-0 in boxing. 2015, Cody Garbrandt made his UFC debut. He then went 5-0 in the UFC to earn a title shot, and then he finished Dominic Cruz to win the bantamweight title. But since that day, he's went through a bad path. He's gone 3-5 in his last 8. However, he is on a 2-fight win streak now. So 2 fights ago he was 1-5, and was he going to stay? Was he going to go? He's now amassed 2 wins in a bounce, and we're going to see what kind of Cody Garbrandt's going to turn up, because let's not before, up until he fought Dominic Cruz, he was a world beater. He made everyone look terrible. So yeah, so Cody Garbrandt's got the height in Figueiredo, but Figueiredo's got the longer reach. Garbrandt's finishing abilities, in terms of the striking, he's very powerful for the weight. Figueiredo got a lot more options. He's got a few submissions underneath him. Very similar significant strikes landed per minute. And very similar absorbed as well. Grappling, Davison Figueiredo probably's got the better BJJ, but in terms of like wrestling, Cody Garbrandt will out wrestle Davison Figueiredo. He should do anyway. So Figueiredo here is a minus 310 favourite. My money's on the underdog Cody Garbrandt. That's how I feel. I feel that Cody Garbrandt can get this done, and yeah, that's what I got my money on. Okay, let's move on. We haven't got much time. Let's just crack through these 13 fights, 12 remaining. Lightweight bout, Bobby Green versus Jim Miller. So, Bobby Green, King Bobby Green, he turned pro back in 2008. He has fought as well. When he turned pro, he has fought for other recognisable and historic promotions such as Affliction, King of the Cage, Strikeforce, and then UFC bought Strikeforce, then he turned into a UFC fighter. This weekend, Bobby Green is making his 25th walk to the octagon, and he is a fan favourite. He is very crisp striking, boxing primarily, fights with his hand down, jabs really fast. His last 5 fights have ended before the final bell, so don't be surprised if a finish happens in this fight. His last fight was a loss to Jalen Turner though, which Jalen Turner finished him in the first round, and that fight kind of went viral because the ref let the fight continue for about 20 seconds or more than it should have. It should have been finished way sooner. And then we go on to Jim Miller. Look at Jim Miller. Jim Miller's fought on UFC 100 and 200. And for over a year now, he has set his sights on fighting at UFC 300. That was his goal. And yeah, that being his goal, he has fought much better recently than he has for numerous years. Jim Miller made his pro debut back in 2005, and he's been a part of the UFC since 2008, making his debut in UFC 89. Where he entered the UFC with an 11-1-1 record. He's now making the 44th walk to the octagon, 18 finish in that time, and his last 6 fights, he's won 5 of them, and all of the wins have been finish. So, Bobby Green's last 5 fights have ended before the final bell. Jim Miller's last 5 wins have ended before the final bell. I can't see this going any other way than, before fighting. The fight will end before the final bell. It's going to be a finish. If I have to pick one, I don't know, I think Jim Miller might just have the ability to grind out a victory. But I do like Bobby Green, but it's not about who you like. It's about who you think is going to get a win. I think Jim Miller can do it, I think Jim Miller can do it and make his way into the top 15. There's no point looking at the stats. I think Jim Miller can do it. I think it's written in the stars. So there you go. I've got 2 underdogs winning the first 2 fights of the night. Next, we have Jessica Andrade and Marina Rodriguez. Okay, so Jessica Andrade then. She's probably a future Hall of Famer, She fought in the UFC in 2013. That's the first fight she had, which, coincidentally was the first year in which women was able to compete in the UFC. So she's been around since the start. She started the career at flyweight, going 4-3, before ultimately deciding to move down to strawweight. There she won 3 straight fights to earn herself a title shot at strawweight, where, check. She then went on another 3-fight win streak, where she earned her second title fight at strawweight, in which she beat Rose Namajunas, and that was a viral KO. She slammed her in the second round, slammed her on her head, and knocked her out cold. So that was crazy. This earned her a performance of the night and fight of the night bonus. She then lost her title in her next fight, which, is against the current champion Weili Zhang, who's fighting on this card too, and Weili Zhang beat her in under a minute. Since then, she's gone 5-5. She's moved up to flyweight, back down to strawweight. Don't really know what she's doing. But she did have her last fight was a win over Mackenzie Dern, so she's still got some decent performances in her. Marina Rodriguez then, she came through the Dana White Contender Series avenue back in 2018, where she beat her opponent Maria Oliveira via first round TKO. Her first fight in UFC though wasn't as successful, as she went the distance to win a draw against Randa Marcos. Not sure where she is now or how good she done. I've not really heard of it, so not so good for her. However, from March 2019 to March 2022, she went 6-1, beating opponents such as Tisha Torres, Amanda Ribas, Mackenzie Dern, and actually the title challenger of Weili Zhang, which is Yan Xiaonan. And Marina Rodriguez has had 3 fights since March 2022, where, only one of those fights did she win, and that was against Michelle Waterson, who actually coincidentally hasn't even got a win in 4 years, well, nearly 4 years. So, Marina Rodriguez is on a little bit of a decline too. So I'm not really sure who to pick here. Let's have a little look at the stats then to see. So, Andrade has got like ridiculous power, and she is quite good at grappling. I'm picking Andrade. I think Andrade can do it. Okay, we move on. Okay, so the headline of the early prelims, if you will, is number 10th ranked Jalen Turner against 13th ranked Renato Moicano. Jalen Turner is huge for the lightweight division. Absolutely massive. He stands at 6'3". If he's not the tallest, he must be like in the top 3 tallest people in lightweight, He's also a byproduct of Dana White Contender Series, where he won in the first round due to the doctor stoppage, where his opponent suffered a broken foot. His first fight in the UFC, Jalen Turner actually decided to step up a division to welterweight and fought Vicente Luque, where he lost in the first round. That was on Khabib McGregor fight card. That's when Jalen Turner made his debut. Since moving back down to lightweight though, it proved that Jalen Turner does have potential and he is a top 10 fighter. So he's won 6 of his 7 bouts up to 2022, with his only loss coming against Matt Favola. However, he has lost 2 of his last 3 fights, but 2 of them losses were split decisions, and his latest bout came against Bobby Green, in which I told you about that brutal KO that went on a little bit longer. So, yeah. Moving on. Jalen Turner's opponent is Renato Moicano. He was a little bit of an unknown fighter throughout most of his UFC career. He fought amazing people, but was never like a standout performer or a standout personality. He did enter the UFC, with a decent record. He was 8-0, and a win over a current UFC fighter, Ismail Bonfim. So he beat Ismail Bonfim in the regional scene before going to UFC. He started his UFC career at featherweight, where he went 5-3. However, he did only lose to like the cream of the crop of the division, Korean Zombie, Brian Ortega, and what some would consider the GOAT of featherweight, Jose Aldo. His size though was too big for featherweight, and he was making some serious weight cuts. I mean, look, he's a 5'11". He's quite big. 72-inch reach. So he was cutting some serious weight, and probably was becoming a little bit of a detriment to him. So he did decide to move up to lightweight. Since gone up to lightweight, he's gone 5-2 with wins over Jai Herbert, Brad Riddell, and most recently Drew Dober. He's actually as well, he's drawn a huge social media attention and has become one of the most popular personalities in the lightweight now. It all started, he cut a mean promo after finishing Brad Riddell, which has now coined him the name of Money Moicano, where he was saying he'll fight anyone, he loves money, and as long as he gets paid, he's Money Moicano, and feed him to the wolves kind of thing. So shout out to Money Moicano. Money Moicano is really shown his personality recently, and I think Money Moicano's the underdog. I'm gonna go for the underdog. I think Ronaldo Moicano can get a win over Dylan Turner here. Yes, something about him, he's on a roll. Next up, we have Sadiq Youssef and Diego Lopez. So Sadiq Youssef has a 13-3 record and is 7-2 in the UFC. If you count the Dana White Contender Series, he went into the Contender Series 6-1, where he beat now lightweight prospect Mike Davis. I don't know how the hell Mike Davis made featherweight, mind. That is ridiculous. He's way too big for lightweight. So, yeah, he racked up a 4-fight win streak in the UFC and after the Dana White Contender Series performance. His first loss came in the UFC came against Arnold Allen, but to be fair to Sadiq Youssef, he has won 2 of his last 3 fights as well. But his latest fight was a loss to Edson Barboza. A little fun fact about Sadiq Youssef: he's actually currently a voice actor in a Disney Plus animation named Iwaju. So, check that out. I have not watched it yet, but yeah. So he's a voice actor in an animation. So let's move on. Diego Lopez. He's one of my favorite fighters. He's my favourite fighter since he stepped up on short notice back in May of 2023 to take on top 5 contender Movsar Evloev. He nearly finished Evloev, but ultimately he did lose a decision. But he coming in really short notice. He's Alexa Grasso's coach, and he was there anyway, and on the week of, he just stepped up on short notice to fight Movsar and gave him a really hard time. And since that fight, he actually took 2 other fights, additional fights in 2023, where he beat both Gavin Tucker and Pat Sabatini via first round stoppage. He's even won a performance bonus in all 3 of his UFC fights. He has 23 wins, as we can see. He has a 91% finish rate on them 23 wins. He's a savage. Diego Lopez is a slight favourite. Yeah, I'm gonna go with the favourite, Diego Lopez. He's one of my favourite fighters. I'm not going against him. That's just not happening. We move on. Next, we have a women's bantamweight bout. Okay, we got Holly Holm versus Kayla Harrison. This is one of the most intriguing fights for me. I've watched Kayla Harrison for a couple of years in the PFL. I've always wondered how she's going to do in UFC if she ever came, but UFC wasn't really doing the 145-pound division anymore. Kayla Harrison's in the 155-pound division in PFL, so I could see her, maybe cutting the extra £10 to make 145 for the UFC, but they haven't really got that division anymore. She signed for the £135 division. So before moving on to Holly Holm, Kayla Harrison, before she signed with the UFC, she actually done a tester where she's made £135 and looked in good shape. Almost done like a, before she signed to the UFC, she wanted to test if she could do it, and she done it. So she felt comfortable in signing for the UFC. So this is really, really, really intriguing for me to find out, what has she got? How good is she going to be? So before we speak any more on Kayla, let's talk about Holly. She's a boxing Hall of Famer, probably future UFC Hall of Famer too. So Holly Holm is the only woman to win world titles in boxing and MMA. Holly Holm went 33-2 in boxing, and one of those defeats she's actually avenged as well. She won the IBA and WPL welterweight and light welterweight titles, so she won two championships in 2 different weight classes too. She last boxed in 2013, and after that Holly Holm turned her attention to MMA, and 2 years before she gave up boxing, she started MMA, and between 2011 and 2014 she went 7-0 to then earn herself a chance to go into the UFC roster. Her first bout was against the current bantamweight champion Raquel Pennington, and she beat her. Then she followed that up by a win over Marion Renaud, which set up a fight against what at the time was a dominant Ronda Rousey in 2015. Holly Holm kicked, KO'd Ronda Rousey to win the bantamweight champion in her third fight. Ultimately, she did lose the title in her first defence, and that was against Miesha Tate. But she has literally consistently fought top 5, top 10 opponents, even to this day, and she's gone up against one of the best women's fighters in Kayla Harrison. Kayla Harrison, as you can see, she's 16-1. So Kayla Harrison is a 2-time Olympic champion in judo, earning gold medals in 2012 in London and 2016 in Rio. She competed in the 78 kilogram category. After the Olympics, she turned her attention to MMA, which her first bout came in 2018 for the PFL, which she stayed until this week. She went 15-0 before she had an eventual loss, but those 15 bouts, 11 of them came via stoppage, so she's a savage and she's gonna go and try and finish. Her first loss was to Larissa Pacheco, who is the current PFL 2-weight champion, and then she went back to winning ways with a win over Aspen Ladd in what would be her final PFL performance. If she manages to beat Holly Holm this weekend, especially if it is in a convincing, impressive manner, I would not be surprised if she fights for UFC gold next, and I won't be surprised if her next fight will be for the UFC belt. So, there's no odds on this. I'm picking Kayla Harrison. I think she's gonna cut the weight. She's gonna be extremely strong. I don't think she's gonna deplete herself too much. I think she's doing it scientifically, doing it professionally. Maybe trim down a little bit in weight, so she's not just water cutting, irresponsibly. She's like looking slimmer in general. And yeah, I think she's gonna keep a lot of her strength, and she's gonna look really good. Next we go, again, another intriguing fight. I'm looking forward to this. Calvin Kattar, known for his, crisp boxing style. Calvin Kattar is looking to get back to his winning ways this weekend. He's 7-5 in the UFC. Notable wins over the likes of Shane Burgos, Andre Fili, Ricardo Lamas, Jeremy Stevens, Danny Ige, Giga Chikadze. So he's got some really, really, really notable wins. He has lost 3 of his last 4 fights though, but again, against top opponents, Max Holloway, Josh Emmett, and most recently Arnold Allen. And to be fair to Qatar, the Arnold Allen fight was back in 2022, and it was an injury that hindered him. And he's been out ever since for the 18 months. This is a concern for me, to be out for 18 months with an injury. You know, on his first fight is coming up against a really good Aljamain Sterling. I don't know. We shall see. We shall see how he does. But yeah, it was a knee injury, and Aljamain Sterling's going to be testing that by the grappling. And I think Aljamain Sterling, in all honesty, is one of the most disrespected and underrated fighters to ever grace the octagon. The former bantamweight champs is stepping up a weight class. He's making his debut in featherweight against Qatar, a top 10 ranked featherweight, which, it could seem propel up the rankings for a title fight or a title eliminator if he manages to get the win. Aljamain was a huge bantamweight, and his weight cuts were really getting to him, and it was getting really hard. So stepping up a weight class was the best decision he could do, I think. And I think his grappling and his style is actually going to be super effective in this division. You can see, how Volkanovski had success in this division because he's a really good grappler. I think Aljamain Sterling can do the same. Aljamain Sterling was 15-4 going on to his last title fight against Sean O'Malley, which he lost, but he was also riding a 9-fight win streak at that point. So don't sleep on Aljamain Sterling. Aljamain Sterling's actually the favourite. Okay, so no one is sleeping on him by the looks, and I'm gonna agree. I think Aljamain Sterling's got this. Next up, the light heavyweight bout. This is the featured prelim of the night, and it's number 2 ranked Yuri Prohashka and number 5 ranked Rakic. Yuri is an extremely exciting fighter. He's one of my favourites. He has KO power. He has a style that no one can match. And unlike most of the MMA fighters, Yuri actually made a really solid name for himself outside the UFC, as he was the Rise and light heavyweight champion. When the UFC acquired him. And going into the UFC, Yuri was on a 10-fight win streak, and 9 of those were by finish. Yuri has a 96% finish rate, so he's never in a boring fight. His only loss in the UFC came back in November 2023 against current champion and UFC 300 headliner Alex Pereira, which Yuri was doing well in. He just got caught, and that happens. Rakic, on the other hand, very crisp technical fighter, very good kickboxer, but he hasn't fought since May 22, where he faced young Blachowicz, and in that fight he lost because of a leg injury that's kept him out of this octagon until now. Rakic, though, he is 6-2 in the UFC, and the last loss was the leg injury one, so he's only lost once fully in the UFC. He's also got a finish rate of 71%, so my guess is this ain't gonna go the distance. Not only that, Rakic is from Austria. He's not from Austria, he's from Serbia. Yeah, that's weird. It's not why it says Austria there, he's Serbian. Unless he fights out of Austria, but he's Serbian. And he's from the Czech Republic. These countries have had bad blood. Austria, Serbia, Czech Republic, Hungary, Slovakia, all these countries have had, major history. And these are like neighbouring countries in Central Eastern Europe. So, yeah, there's a little bit of bad blood there. And so I can't see this going the distance. I really can't. Alexander Rakic is the favourite. I'm picking Yuri. I think Yuri's going to knock him out. And Yuri's going to get the finish. let's move up. So now we enter the main card. Oh boy. Bo Nickel and Cody Brundage. Bo Nickel's a huge favourite, and you know, I'm gonna pick Bo Nickel to win. Cody Brundage can definitely get a win, but I think Bo Nickel's gonna win. Bo Nickel is, you know, one of the hottest prospects of all of MMA. He's a former 3-time NCAA Division I national champion. So, you know, wanted to test himself in MMA. Despite only having 5 professional fights, all 5 have been via finish, and 4 of them have come within the UFC. So he's had 2 Dana White Contender Series fights and 2 actual fights. His latest fight was a 38-second KO over Val Woodburn. However, Val Woodburn did step up on short notice and actually went up a weight class. So I don't know how much that's going to test him. But Bo Nickel does seem to have incredible knockout power. And it goes without saying, incredible wrestling. So this is an appropriate step up, I feel, for Bo Nickel. To, you know, Cody Brundage is an appropriate step up for Bo Nickel, I believe. Brundage is 10-5 in MMA. He's 4-4 in UFC, so he's had 8 UFC fights. All of his wins have been finishes, so he can get a finish, and he is currently on a 2-fight win streak too, with back-to-back finishes, first round finishes that is. So, you know, I think it's an appropriate step up for Bo Nickel. It'll be interesting to see how he does, but I'm picking Bo Nickel to win. We move on. We have, okay, number 1 ranked Charles Oliveira versus Arman Sarukian. Arman Sarukian's a big favourite, is he? I don't know. Okay. So yeah, that must be the country that they fight out of, because he is Armenian. Charles de Bronx, probably a future Hall of Famer, and probably goes down in the Mount Rushmore of UFC lightweights. After his loss to Donald Cerrone way back, Charles decided to move down a weight into featherweight, where he actually had 11 fights in UFC. He went 7-4, which obviously is still pretty good. You know, you're talking about really good fighters here. But, you know, he had some issues making weight, so he moved back up to lightweight after those 11 fights. And, you know, that looked like it was a bad idea. He lost 2 of his first 3 fights, with the latter being finished from Paul Felder. And then something just clicked in Charles Oliveira. Maybe that's self-belief. Maybe, you know, he particularly worked on one set of skill. I don't know, something clicked. He then racked up a 12-fight win streak, 10 of them by finish. He won the vacant lightweight title against Michael Chandler, and then proceeded to defend the belt against Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje. He eventually then lost against the current champion, Islam Makhachev. But then he bounced back, and his last fight was a first-round finish over a tough Beneil Dariush. So Charles Oliveira is, you know, he's very tricky to deal with. Moving on to Arman. Arman is another guy who finished Beneil Dariush in the first round in the last performance. Known for his superior grappling, his wrestling, the Georgian wrestling. He could pose a great threat to Charles on the floor. Arman Sarukian actually took on Islam in his first fight, and it was a competitive fight. You know, he did lose a close decision against Islam. He since then ranked up a 5-fight win streak to earn a fight against another surging prospect, which was Mateusz Gamrot. Sarukian actually lost against Gamrot, but again, another very close fight, and actually was touted as one of the best grappling fights in the UFC history. So, if you're interested in grappling, take a look at Arman Sarukian and Mateusz Gamrot. But since his loss to Gamrot, Arman is now 1-3 on a bounce. And, you know, Dana White have confirmed the winner of this fight will fight for the lightweight title in their next fight. So, yeah, this is going to be an interesting one to look at. I think Charles Oliveira can do it. I'm picking a lot of underdogs in this UFC 300. I think Charles Oliveira can do it. I think he can get the finish. I think Sarukian may be coming in on a high after knocking out Beneil Dariush in the first round. And I think Charles Oliveira can catch him and then get his back and choke him out. So that is my pick. Move on. For the BMF title, Justin Gaethje, known as the human highlight, he's never in a boring fight. This was the case before the UFC, and especially since Gaethje entered the UFC 17-0, and his first fight was against Michael Johnson, where he KO'd Michael Johnson in the second round. He did then get catapulted, up in competition, facing former UFC lightweight champion, and a former UFC lightweight interim champion, Eddie Alvarez and Dustin Poirier, respectively. He did lose both those fights via finish, but that didn't deter him. He came back. He went on a 4-fight finish streak of his own to win a title shot against Khabib, which he obviously lost. That he got finished in the second round. But since then he's come back again, and he's won his last 3 fights, with the latest being a redemption win, head kick KO over Dustin Poirier to win the vacant BMF title. He now defends it against a very tough opponent in Max Holloway. Is the Blessed Express on his way to pick up another belt? That will happen if he beats Justin Gaethje. Max is 21-7 in the UFC. 21-7. His only loss have come to the best in the world. Yeah, after losing to Conor McGregor back in 2013, Max Holloway went on a 13-fight win streak to win and defend the featherweight strap. This win streak ended when he faced Dustin Poirier for the second time, but that was up in lightweight. And prior to Poirier beating Volkanovski, Max Holloway was known as the best featherweight in the world that's not named Alex Volkanovski. Max has spent the last 6 months or so building his frame for this fight, knowing that he would move up in weight. And I'm excited for Max Holloway to show what an actual 155 for Max Holloway looks like, and I think Max Holloway's going to get this done. I'm going to pick another underdog. I really am. I think Max Holloway's going to get the win. Next, we move on. Why is in the odds for this? But yeah, I think Max Holloway's going to become the new BMF, and he deserves it if he beats Justin Gaethje. We move on to Weili Zhang, Zhang Weili, and Yan Xiaonan. Zhang Weili is the current women's strawweight champion. She did lose her first ever professional fight in MMA, and then went on a 21-fight win streak that included a Hall of Fame fight to retain the title against Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Prior to that bout, she secured the title by beating Jessica Andrade within the first minute back in her home country of China. She did lose her title to Rose Namajunas. That was via a head kick KO in the first round. And then they did rematch, and she lost via split decision, so a much closer second fight, but she did lose again. But since then, Weili Zhang has put together a 3-fight win streak, which was a spinning back fist KO over Joanna Jędrzejczyk, a rear naked choke over Carla Esparza to regain her title, and then defended her title against Amanda Lemos. She takes on fellow countryman Yan Xiaonan. It's the first time 2 Chinese fighters will go head-to-head for a world title in UFC. Fighting out Team Alpha Male though, which is headed by Hall of Famer and now coach Uriah Faber. Yao Xiaonan is 8-2 in UFC. Her two losses came against a two-time world champion in Carla Esparza and a close split decision loss to Marina Rodriguez. She is currently on a 2-fight win streak after victories over Mackenzie Dern and a first-round KO over Jessica Andrade. So, Shannon is coming off a real hot streak here. However, I think Zhang Weili is the best women fighter on the planet. I think she's really, really good, very good striking technically, very strong, amazing grappling, and has added submission into her game. I think Zhang Weili will retain her title, and I don't know who's going to beat her, I really don't. So, looking forward to that fight, but I think Zhang Weili will retain the title. Okay, we're bordering on 40 odd minutes, so let's get this one wrapped up. UFC 300 main event. Alex Poatan Pereira versus Jamal Hill. Look at them tattoos. So funny. Alex Pereira is a 2-division champion in Glory Kickboxing and a 2-division champion in the UFC. And he's the only person to defeat Israel Adesanya 3 times over 2 sports. And he's the first guy to defeat Israel at 185 pounds. He actually unfortunately suffered defeat to Israel in the rematch in MMA, in which Alex Pereira decided to move up a weight class then to light heavyweight after that defeat. This seems to be a great move at the moment. He's 2-0 in the division, currently the champion. He earned a split decision win over Jan Blachowicz, and then his title fight was against former title holder Yuri Prochazka, who's also on the card. Alex Pereira is now one of the most popular fighters in the UFC, and he's gonna be the favourite, the fan favourite on the night. Jamal Hill, he's a former UFC light heavyweight champion in his own right, and he actually became the first person out of the Dana White Contender Series to achieve the feat of becoming a UFC champion. His one and only loss in the UFC was against Paul Craig, who caused an arm injury when going for a submission. That was back in 2021. But since that fight, Jamal went 4-0, including a viral KO win over Johnny Walker. Look that one up. That's one of the most crazy KOs I've ever seen in my life. A KO over Thiago Santos, and then a comfortable win over then champion Glover Teixeira, who actually trains Alex Pereira. Jamal had to relinquish his belt as he suffered a ruptured Achilles while playing basketball. Now, this is the kind of injury that can keep some people out of sports forever, forcing them to retire. However, Jamal is returning to the octagon only 8 months later. Now, there is a lot of people speculating that, is he returning too soon, and that speculation is deserved. 8 months to return is really, really soon. And Poatan is known for, his leg attacks. And unfortunately, I think that's going to be the big thing. I think Jamal Hill, not only is Jamal Hill coming back early, I don't think he's going to have the fitness that you would have. He's coming back 8 months, but you need a 3-month camp really, so that means he's training only 5 months after having that injury. It's ridiculously quick. I think that could be too much. But Alex Pereira's been really active since he's come to the UFC. Really active. 3 or 4 fights last year. I think Alex Pereira's going to win. I think Alex Pereira, he is the favourite at the moment, but I think Alex Pereira is going to win and retain his title. And that's it. That is the biggest card of the year. The biggest card of probably the last, few years. There might have been bigger main events or something around them, but fight on fight, I think this is the best card we've had for some years, since probably Conor McGregor's gone. So I'm extremely looking forward to this. I can't wait to stay up until 7 o'clock in the morning watching this. I'm going to put a few bets on. I'm going to put exactly what I've said who's going to win on here, and hopefully all these underdogs can come in for me. I think some of these underdogs can really got a good chance. So yeah, that's it, guys. That's me coming back. I'm back, baby, and back with a long video for you as well. And if you did like this video, please, give it a thumbs up, show some support to your boy coming back. And with that being said, I hope you enjoyed. Whether that's in the morning, in the evening, in the afternoon. And I want to wish you a good morning, a good evening, a good afternoon. But most importantly, as always,